I'm Richard Schwartz, President Emeritus of Jewish Veg, and the author most recently of this book, Vegan Revolution, Saving Our World, Revitalizing Judaism. And this is just one of many podcasts where I'm hoping to interview the most outstanding activists in vegetarianism, veganism, animal rights, environmental issues. And we have a very special guest tonight, Yossi Wolfson, who's been an activist in Israel, vegetarianism, veganism, animal rights for many, many, many years. I remember it must have been 20 or more years where I first met Yossi. So Yossi, I want to start by, first of all, welcome to the program. And please give us an idea, how did you become such an activist? What were the events or readings or whatever that made you get so involved?
First of all, thank you, Richard, for having me in this podcast. And
my pleasure.
It's great to be interviewed by such an inspiring person. About my own path, well, I started as a child, very much because of my sister, with a very naive view about just, thinking about the animals that were killed for meat. And I say naive because we didn't know anything about factory farming. We thought about people catching a chicken in the backyard and killing her. That was our this is how we imagined it, and we became vegetarian. Later, I became active during high school period in the Israeli Society for the Abolition of Vivisection. It was the 1980s, and vivisection was one of the most important things on the agenda of the animal liberation movement at this time, also, both in Israel, but also in the United States and the United Kingdom. And then in 1994, I think it was, a person named David Messi asked me to help him establishing a group named Anonymous for Animal Rights. He promised me that it will be only giving him a little bit of aid in the red tape issues, which was all lies. And I found myself really involved in that organization. It was a group, more kind of a youth group also before, but in 1994 it was established as a registered society. And since then I was involved in many of the campaigns in Israel, both in terms of grassroots activism, but also legally. I studied law and became a lawyer at the end of the 90s, and it was involved also in some of the legal campaigns. But I think I always thought that the advocacy campaigns and what is going on the ground was more important and also more exciting.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very interesting. Now, you are the coordinator of what's known as Ginger, the Jewish Vegetarian Society in Israel, headquartered in 8 Balfour Street. So can you give us a little background? What's the history? How did the Ginger come about? What's the background of that organization?
Well, the Jewish Vegetarian Society in Israel was established in the beginning of the 90s by Philip Peake, the late Philip Peake, who had established before that the Jewish Vegetarian Society in London. And he had this vision of having headquarters for the Jewish vegetarian movement in Jerusalem, and established the society and bought a place for the society in Balfour Street, as you mentioned, in Talbiya. And the society had a lot of waves of activism, different modes of action that quite resemble what has happened in many vegetarian groups around the world, from more emphasis on health and I don't like the word lifestyle, but way of living, to more activist forms. I think in around 2010, it was named, the place was named Ginger, because the formal name, which was the International Jewish Vegetarian Society in Jerusalem, is well, let's meet tonight at the International Jewish Vegetarian Society in Jerusalem. I don't think it is very helpful, and also it was not so very much international. It was very local in its work, and it was became vegan as we all moved from vegetarianism to veganism, etc., etc. So we chose the word ginger for a number of reasons. One is that you need to put just a little bit of ginger when you cook to have a lot of influence, and the idea is that we want something that might be small but that will change the whole society. Also, ginger is local, and it is mentioned in the Mishnah, so it seems to be a good name. And the activities were most like we had dinners, vegan dinners, and a lot of courses on Judaism and vegetarianism, and on food economy, many such issues. Yeah, and now actually we don't work with a center anymore. Yeah, well, the place has a tradition of Tu B'Shvat Seders from the early 1990s, when Tu B'Shvat Seders were not so popular as they are today. Yeah.
Yep, things have changed. So what do you see as the future for ginger?
Well, right now we are trying to find our path within the animal liberation and the vegan movements, which grew very much, and we found out that the place where we can make a change is by promoting two things. One is grassroots activities, because many of the non-governmental organizations that do vegan work now have a very big, not so big, but very professional staff, and most of their work is through this professional work of people who are hired. And grassroots work is a little bit abandoned. And the other thing is that we try to promote and to encourage critical thinking, more in-depth studying of issues that are related to veganism, so that we can continue and develop also in terms of movements, ideas, and deeper thinking.
Mhm. So Yossi, you have been involved in the animal rights movement in Israel for many, many, many years. How would you assess the animal rights movement today? How much involvement is there, and are there any specific plans for the future?
I think that the Israeli animal liberation movement went through a number of interesting stages. And again, it's not very unique. Many of them can be found also elsewhere. Um, and well, one of them I already mentioned. It went from dealing mostly with vivisection, fur, and animals, and in other modes of exploitation, to emphasizing animals in agriculture and veganism. It went from more radical ideologies, that's another phase in change, to being very much mainstreamed, which has its pluses and minuses. The plus, of course, is that it is now accepted in so many parts of society. It is mainstreamed. It is being vegan is you know is less stereotyped, and the vegan population is growing, and people who are not vegan, at least well, many of them at least declare that they are trying to reduce their meat and animal-based food consumption. So it has become something very strong in the social structure in Israel. It has an influence. It is being listened to in all places of society, from people's Friday evening family conversations to the parliament and to the courts. So yeah, it is getting stronger, but sometimes I think that and this is another move that I see also in other places. In a way, if before we emphasized changing people's minds, now the emphasis is on changing people's behavior, which is important, but sometimes you still need to think about how people think and how people or what people's ideas are. And actually, I see that in the United States, some parts of the movement move even from changing people's behavior to or changing people's behavioral choices to changing what people can choose from, so that people can, they don't even know that they stopped buying meat, and that the product that they are now buying is something really different, which is interesting, and maybe in terms of reducing the numbers of animals who suffer, and maybe even saving the planet. It is something that we should do. But I still think that we should not be hopeless about people's choices and people's ideas.
Mhm. Okay, as you know, many consider Israel to be the world capital of veganism. Do you think that is true, and why or why not?
Well, this requires to some definition of veganism, because if you check where in the world people eat less animal-based foods, Israel will not be the capital of veganism, but will be one of the worst countries. Per capita meat consumption, and especially poultry, is one
Chicken,
of chicken meat is one of the highest in the world. But maybe if you understand veganism not as um, not eating animals, but as a counter movement, you can find that the places where veganism is strongest is the places where animals are exploited the most. In the United States, in Western Europe, in Germany, in Israel. So on the one hand, you find a very, very big movement, a lot of visibility, a lot of places that are self-defined or not self-defined, defined as vegan friendly because they give many vegan options. On the other hand, you find one of the most, the highest per capita consumption of animal-based foods. So yeah, if you ask about the capital of veganism, well, in Tel Aviv, you'll find a lot of vegan restaurants. If you go to India, you'll find much more vegan food everywhere, and people will eat less animal-based food. Even if you go from Israel to all the countries around it, Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, Egypt, you'll find that they eat much less meat, and that in every cafe and restaurant you have great traditional vegan options. They don't call it vegan. They just, this is what they eat. This is the Middle Eastern or Mediterranean cuisine.
Right. But let me ask, I have heard that about 8% of Israelis are vegans and about 13% are either vegans or vegetarians. Are you familiar with those numbers? And what do you think? Are they basically correct?
Yeah, well, there are a number of surveys that tried to check it, and the numbers are usually around this result. It is, of course, a little different if you ask people if they are vegetarians or vegans, or if you ask them, do you refrain from eating fish, chicken, cow meat, etc., etc. The answers you get are different, but if you, if you so this number of about 13% vegan and vegetarian might include people who eat fish from time to time and still describe themselves as vegetarian.
Right. Okay. Now, if somebody asks you, why do you think that you should be vegan, say, how would you respond?
Ooh, that's a big question. Well, you know, there are both very well-known reasons to be vegan, and maybe the first and most intimate one or most emotive one is I think Isaac Bashevis Singer was asked why he was a vegetarian. Was it for the health? And he said, yes, it was for the health of the chicken. Yeah, so it's enough to open the eyes to the realities of animal exploitation, especially in industrialized agriculture, but even in in traditional farming. And if one is really looking at the reality in the eyes and not going into lies and self-deception, it is impossible to eat these things anymore. So this is one important thing, but I think that one of the other reasons that I was reciting these reasons since the 1990s, but the environment, the climate, and now even though I was reciting it all the time, I think that only in recent years it really became a deep understanding and feeling and fear that in my own lifetime, Jerusalem that I know will not be the same anymore. Trees will be dying, heat will be impossible, desertification will be going on. The world as we know it is going to fall apart. And animal agriculture is really part of it. It is a huge part of it, and it is and changing it and getting rid of it is one of the things that we can do quickly and can have a dramatic impact, and a quick dramatic impact, because the impact of methane is reduced very quickly, 20 years. And it's something that doesn't have real costs. When you want to change the whole energy system of a country from coal and gas and oil to solar systems, it's a long process, and it has a lot of costs, and sometimes also environmental costs if you put solar panels in open spaces. And here it is just a matter of changing behavior, and with only advantages, because it has also the health advantages and the other environmental advantages. And in Israel specifically, it also allows for food sovereignty, because we're totally dependent on imports for animal-based food. Either we import the animals alive, or we import meat, or we import food for the animals. It's all import-based. And again, with the climate crisis.
By the way,
yeah, I'm here with you.
Okay, how important do you think Jewish values are in trying to convince people who are, very dedicated to Judaism? Do you see Jewish values as pointing to veganism as the ideal diet?
Yeah, well, again, I'll speak from my own history of involvement in Judaism. I grew up in a family that was very Jewish, not in the Orthodox way. So we didn't keep all mitzvot, but we would go to synagogue every week, and my mother especially was very involved in Jewish teachings. She was a follower of Sholem and Buber and other Jewish scholars. And the spirit of Judaism that I grew on emphasized the issue of tikkun olam, of justice. The teachings of prophets like Isaiah and Amos and etc. So this was the spirit of Judaism that I grew up, and of course, you know, in every religion, also in Judaism, people can find what they look for, and I know that you know, probably most Jewish scholars throughout history did eat animals, but throughout the Jewish history, you have this voice that kind of reminds you all the time about veganism, actually, about the problem with animal-based food. It starts with, you know, Gan Eden, paradise being vegan, and Sefer Bereshit. And one of the things that I really like is in Parashat Noach, when you read the mitzvot of Bnei Noach, the way it sounds in Hebrew, for example, you know, like the Dam had, yeah, like Dam Adam Vadama, and it's like things really ring very well, and the idea that you don't eat parts of an animal, and later connections between eating animals and moral I lost the English word, but eating animals is connected with stagnation, with the stagnation of the rich people in Shomron who eat a lot of cattle and lose the way of God. So all of these texts, and they continue throughout the Jewish tradition with the Kli Yakar and with other people. There were also always those people who were critical about meat eating, who talked about justice and self-restraint, and as connected to animal-based food, to plant-based food, and not to animal-based food. So I think I got it a little bit through my acquaintance with Jewish texts, but mostly through this ethos of you know, being Jewish is to be to speak truth to power, is to be into tikkun olam, to be always on the side of the oppressed.
Right. Okay. Okay. So very powerful argument. So you know, I'm not the very experienced interviewer. So, are there any points you'd like to bring out as we head toward the end of this interview? Maybe some issues that you're very concerned about that I haven't brought out through my questioning. Any final thoughts and summary conclusions?
Yeah, well, I think there are 2 points that I think that can be summarized in the word lifestyle. Veganism is not a lifestyle. Veganism is a way of life. It is, and even if people sometimes choose it as a lifestyle, when people understand, or not even understand, there's nothing very big to understand, but when they acknowledge the issues on stake, it becomes a way of life and not a lifestyle. It is not so easy to change. And also, being Jewish is not a lifestyle. It's not, you know, just technically doing this mitzvah and this mitzvah and this mitzvah. It's been committed to deep values and to some perspective on the world that is difficult, like being vegan. It's looking at the evil of the world in the eye, acknowledging it, and being committed to fight it, to struggle against it, and to be always on the lines, and not getting into some kind of stagnated lifestyle that might be very self satisfactory. It's not about satisfaction. It's about yearning to something better. And this is something very similar in vegan and Jewish way of life.
Okay, I want to thank you very much and wish you much success, and kudos, kol hakavod, for really a tremendous life of involvement. I wish there were many, many, many more like you, and look forward to continuing to work with you. I've made a resolution 5782 in the Hebrew year, 2022 in the more civil year, has to be a turning point. You know, when
Should be.
throwing back the climate change threats, etc., and having people like you involved makes it a lot easier. So thank you very much, and again, look forward to continue to work with you and trying to have a more compassionate, better world, more environmentally sustainable world. So
thank you very much, Richard.
it was a pleasure to interview you. Shalom.